Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, we got a bunch of great Steelers news and rumors to cover for you guys here on a Monday. First up, we got the latest Steelers injury news and updates, including a big one on Joey Porter Jr. getting ready for this game against the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 18. Then I'm going to break down the numbers and why I still believe Russell Wilson is still clearly QB1 here in Pittsburgh, at least for the rest of this season. And then we'll finish up today's show with AFC playoff matchup scenarios. There's only 4 teams the Steelers could play on Wild Card Weekend. We'll be breaking down the most likely teams and scenarios at the end of today's show. Now, before we get into the content today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because we will be going live for our live watch party, our last regular season watch party of this season. Steelers versus Bengals. Steelers trying to get the best possible seed, maybe even try to win the AFC North Division if somehow the Browns beat the Baltimore Ravens on Saturday. We're going to be going live an hour and a half, an extra long pregame show to finish out the regular season here on Steelers Talk. It's going to start at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It is an 8 o'clock Eastern kick, so 90 minutes before the Steelers kick off, me and Coop are going to be right here talking some Steelers football with you guys, getting ready for that big matchup, so make sure you click that subscribe button right now. So Mike Tomlin, with some big news today at his weekly press conference, says that he expects cornerback Joey Porter Jr. to be back in the fold this week in a big matchup here in Week 18 versus the Cincinnati Bengals. It was originally reported that Joey Porter Jr. probably wouldn't play here in Week 18, that he would be back for the wild card round, but now Mike Tomlin says he expects number 24 to be on the field on Saturday night. And listen, man, this is big news here because the Steelers get their enforcer back on the outside in the secondary, all right? And I know that Joey Porter Jr. has a little bit of a holding issue at times, and sometimes he does get some defensive pass interference. He's very physical, all right? But you really want to have that enforcer, that bigger-bodied corner that can go up against bigger-body type receivers like T. Higgins on a week-to-week basis. And Joey Porter Jr. is a very important cog to the machine that is the Steelers defense if this defense wants to get back to putting up elite production like they were in the first half of the 2024 season as we approach the NFL playoffs. Also, it appears that a big-time Steelers starter here, a veteran Steelers starter, may be getting benched, and that is Cam Sutton. Yesterday, we talked about how I would bench Cam Sutton for Beanie Bishop Jr. in the slot, and it appears that that is what's going to be happening here. Zachary Smith here from Steelers Now said on Twitter yesterday, don't expect to see much of Sutton this week. So I do trust Zachary on this, and I do think that Sutton is probably going to see much less playing time. Maybe he's not completely benched. Maybe he does play a little bit, but I do expect Beanie Bishop Jr. to out-rep him this week in the slot. Also, this should be a big week for the other starting corner here in Pittsburgh, Dante Jackson, who has really struggled in coverage this year. And we talked about that on yesterday's show as well. You guys can check that out after today's show if you want to get my full thoughts on D-Jack. But, going into the playoffs here, if he continues to struggle, if he struggles against Jamar Chase, if he struggles against T. Higgins, he struggles against whoever he's matched up against this week, I mean, you got a guy in Corey Trice Jr. waiting in the wings here that is somebody that I would seriously consider. Now, right now, I do think Joey Porter Jr., Dante, and then, of course, Beanie Bishop Jr. in the slot, that's going to be your starting trio this week. But if Dante Jackson has another week where he's struggling to pick up his assignments, where he's struggling against the receiver that he's going up against in one-on-one coverage, if he continues to struggle in coverage, I might consider going to Corey Trice Jr. to be this team's number 2 corner heading into the playoffs. Now, it might depend on the matchup and what receivers you're going up against on a week-to-week basis, but I thought Corey Trice Jr. played a really, really good game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's only got better the more games that he has played in the National Football League. So if Dante Jackson continues to struggle, I would consider turning to Corey Trice Jr. in the postseason. Some other returning players for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, Ben Skoranek, the wide receiver and special team specialist, is slated to be back this week after suffering a hip injury against the Baltimore Ravens. Then Justin Fields, who suffered an abdominal injury, is going to be, not an abdominal. He's going to be on the field this week as the backup quarterback to Russell Wilson. And listen, man, this team is getting healthy, all right? You can say whatever you want about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how they're playing on the field, but listen, man, they're getting healthy at just the right time. There's no excuses heading into the postseason. You don't have any major injuries to any key players on offense or defense at this point. And as long as you get past this Week 18 game versus the Bengals unscathed, you should be going into the postseason with all your starters available and with no excuses on the injury front. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Will the Steelers secondary bounce back this week with Joey Porter Jr. re-entering the fold? Give me simply a yes or a no down there in the comment section for today's pinned comment. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks, our sponsor today. While I'm talking about our sponsor, make sure you give me a yes or a no for today's pinned comment. Now let's get into our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action all on your phone this football season. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks puts their members first, so while withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure, when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup when you use promo code CLNS. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. We got college football playoff games this week, guys, so I'm going to take the more on Selquan Stovall here with the receiving yards. I'm going to take the more on Will Howard passing yards, the Ohio State quarterback, and I'm going to take the more on Carnell Tate, the Ohio State wide receiver, and rushing plus receiving touchdowns. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup when you download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get that $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So now let's shift over to the quarterback situation. There's a lot of discourse on Steelers Twitter right now that the Steelers should move on from Russell Wilson right now and go to Justin Fields this late into the game, this late into the season. And honestly, guys, I don't think that's the right call to make. I think Russell Wilson, despite some of the struggles offensively here the last 4 games, I think the numbers still show that Russell Wilson gives this team this year the best possible chance at success in the postseason here down the stretch. You take a look at the numbers this year per game and per attempt here from Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. The Steelers offense is still scoring more points per game, over a field goal more per game with Russell Wilson. That's despite some of the struggles here in these last 4 weeks. And then you get the yards per attempt, still over almost a yard more per attempt than Justin Fields. So Russell Wilson doing a better job and more efficient than Justin Fields is, more explosive than he is as a passer, than the total yards per game. And I keep hearing, Jack, but what about the running that Justin Fields provides? Well, Russell Wilson makes up for that with his arm by getting more total yards per game, and it's almost 15 more yards per game there, guys. And then you got the big-time throw percentage much higher for Russell Wilson, who is still throwing big-time throws over 5% of his pass attempts, and the turnover-worthy play percentage, even though it's gone up the last 2 weeks, it is still much lower than Justin Fields, 1.9 for Russell Wilson for 2.8 for Justin Fields. But Jack, all Justin Fields does is win. Oh, he's got a better win percentage than Russell Wilson. Oh, this team was so much better with Justin Fields than there at quarterback. Well, here's the thing, man, and here's really the big point. When Justin Fields was in earlier in the season, this defense was playing much, much better. In the games that Fields won, all right, he went 4-2. In those 4 games that he won, the Steelers defense gave up less than 10 points in those games. I'm pretty sure Russell Wilson would have gone 4-0 in those games as well, guys, okay? And then you look at the defensive points per game allowed. In Russell Wilson's win, it's over 10 more points allowed with Russell Wilson in at quarterback. So Russ has had more to overcome in terms of what the defense has given up. Justin Fields benefited from having arguably the best defense in football when he was playing, and he still only got this offense to about 20 points per game. And despite the offense having the ball for less, Russell Wilson and this offense is scoring more than when Justin Fields was in there. So I'm sick and tired of hearing this argument that this team was better with Justin Fields. Yeah, it was, because the defense was playing better, not because Justin Fields was better. And I wish people would bring that context into the situation. And when it comes to beating teams that score over 20 points a game against the Steelers, Russell Wilson has won 2 of those games this year. It was the Cincinnati game and the Washington game where the Steelers defense gave up more than 20 points and the Steelers still won the football game. You know how many times Justin Fields did that in the first 6 weeks? 0 times, right? They gave up, I believe it was 27 points to the Indianapolis Colts, and then they gave up 20 points to the Dallas Cowboys, and they lost both of them. All right, so when I look at the numbers, when I look at, the context of the entire situation, Russell Wilson hasn't been perfect, especially these last 4 games, but he's still the best that the Steelers have right now, guys, and I think that he is the answer as we approach the final stretch of this season. But let me know down there in the comments section, who should start for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the final home stretch here of the 2024 season? Type RW for Russell Wilson or type JF for Justin Fields. I think the numbers clearly indicate, and by the way, the tape clearly indicates Russell Wilson is the better passer. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. So now let's talk about some playoff matchup scenarios here in terms of the teams that the Steelers could play against in Wild Card Weekend. Depending on what happens here in Week 18. So there's only 4 teams that the Steelers could play on Wild Card Weekend. They could play the Bills, they could play the Ravens, they could play the Texans, all of which on the road. Or if they win the division, the only team they could play is the Los Angeles Chargers at Acrisure Stadium. Okay, so those are your 4 options. Now, in terms of the one that I think is the most likely, I think the Houston Texans is probably the most likely. And I do think that the Pittsburgh Steelers can beat the Houston Texans. The Texans have been a team with a terrible offensive line. I think that the Steelers pass rush would absolutely eat against that terrible offensive line. And then you look at, C.J. Stroud, he's put the ball in harm's way a ton this year. The Steelers are first in the league in takeaways with 31 this season. I think even on the road, the Steelers can go into Houston and they can beat that football team in a playoff scenario. I certainly feel confident in the Steelers' ability to get a W if that's the opponent. Then the second most likely opponent, I think, is the Baltimore Ravens, okay? And the reason why I think this is because the way that you play the Ravens is if they win, they lock up the number 3 seed. Buffalo wins against the Patriots this weekend. They lock up the number 2 seed. And then the Steelers lose versus Cincinnati, and they get the 6th seed, which is more than possible, all right? So Baltimore's certainly a team that I think the Steelers can beat once again. Why do I think that? Because they already beat them when they were fully healthy, all right? Now, you might be pointing to the loss that they took in Baltimore a couple weeks ago, but A, the Steelers weren't fully healthy in that game. B, they just came off a game against a really, really physical Philadelphia team that nobody has played well coming off a game against that football team this year. And I think that, even on the road, I think the Steelers can go back into Baltimore and they can make it a game against, yes, Lamar Jackson, who has not played well in postseason play in his career, and Derrick Henry. I think if you have a completely healthy Steelers defense, they can stop the Baltimore Ravens and beat the Ratbirds again. Then the third most likely team, I think that the third most likely scenario is the Steelers win the division and they play the Los Angeles Chargers at home in a home playoff scenario. And I would also take the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the Los Angeles Chargers. So now that's 3 opponents, 3 for 3. I think the Steelers can beat all 3 of those opponents, all right? And, the Chargers came into Acrisure Stadium. They scored 10 points against the fully healthy Steelers defense earlier in the year. Now, granted, Taylor Heineke played most of the second half, but I really don't think with the group of weapons that the Chargers have that they're going to be just marching it down the field against the Steelers defense, especially if it's fully healthy. And this time you got Russell Wilson, who is the better quarterback compared to Justin Fields, who started that game earlier in the year. And this is how you guys win the division this weekend. The Ravens need to lose versus Dorian Thompson-Robinson and the Browns. Pretty unlikely if you ask me, but hey, the Browns beat them earlier in the year, and then the Steelers need to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Those 2 things happened. The Pittsburgh Steelers walk away with the AFC North crown. Now, the least likely opponent, I think, is the Buffalo Bills. And the reason why is because the only way I really see Buffalo playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 1 is if they lose to the New England Patriots this weekend, and I don't think that's going to happen. All right, I saw that Patriots team play the Chargers this past weekend. It's bad. The Chargers didn't even play that well, and they beat them 40-7. All right, Josh Allen is trying to lock up his MVP case this week. I think that they're going to be trying to win. They're going to be trying to lock up the number 2 seed, and I just can't really say that I think Buffalo's going to be there. But if it does happen that way and the Steelers play the Bills yet again in the first round this year, I can't say I love the Steelers' chances. This is the one team that I think the Steelers have pretty much no shot of beating in the playoffs, all right, or especially in the first round on the road in Buffalo, all right? So I think they absolutely could come away with a playoff victory if it's against Houston, if it's against Baltimore, or if it's against LA. But man, if you get locked up with that Buffalo team in round one, I think this season's going to be coming to a swift end for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But where I'm at right now, guys, is I still think that the Steelers are in a decent spot to potentially win their first playoff game since 2016. Now, they have to turn around some things on defense. The secondary needs to play much more sound. They have to communicate better. Offensively, the offensive line needs to continue to play better than they have throughout this season. Russell Wilson can't turn the football over. They got to get the ball to George Pickens more. There's certain things that this team needs to do for sure, but I mean, all those things are fixable in my opinion, and I think it's very possible, if not likely, that the Pittsburgh Steelers end up winning their first playoff game since 2016 once we get to next week. So before we wrap things up here, I want to take some stock in where the Steelers are in terms of the offensive team stats and the defensive team stats. Since Russell Wilson took over as this team's quarterback, they're 12th in points per game, 13th in yards per game, 16th in yards per play, 12th in third down percentage, second to last in red zone percentage. That's the one area that they're really bad in. And the giveaways for the entire season, they're currently sitting at 16, which ranks 10th in the league. So pretty average offense when you take all the numbers here since week 7. But then you go to the defensive stats, and, yes, it hasn't been as good lately. And, some of these numbers have dipped significantly over these last 3 games. All right, now, you used to be in the top 3 in points per game. Now you're just inside the top 10. Yards per game and yards per play used to be in the top 10. Now you've snuck out of there. All right, then the third down percentage, you're still doing a very good job there. It's second in the league. The red zone percentage is about league average. But the thing that this defense has done consistently well throughout this season, maybe except these last 2 weeks, is turn the football over. They're tied for first in the league right now with 31 takeaways. That's going to have to be the identity of this Steelers defense if they want to win a playoff game this year. That'll be it for today's show, guys. Really do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until tomorrow, guys, here we go, Steelers.